Did you spend your Valentine's Day on Friday night trying to impress the wokest of woke in Kansas City? I didn't. I don't think many of you did, but there were some that chose that route on Friday night. Good morning. Happy Monday. It's President's Day, and we are glad that you are here on KCMO 95.7 FM. If you're off today, you can still stream us on the app or just tell your Google Home or your Alexa to play KCMO Talk Radio. So 1 week after federal agents went to El Potro Mexican Cafe in Liberty, there was a big event there on Friday night, and it was organized by Jackson County legislator Manny Abarca. Now, Manny Abarca, of course, is not someone who represents Clay County, where Liberty is, but never let a crisis go to waste, right? Never let a political opportunity that you can take advantage of go to waste. So he decides to go up there to Liberty, to El Potro, where Homeland Security showed up and took in 12 people. Now, as I told you last week, there was a lot of misinformation around what happened at El Potro. There were 12 people taken into custody due to a tip that was received about workers there at El Potro Mexican restaurant in Liberty. And one of those individuals allegedly had a warrant out for their arrest for sexually abusing a child. They did not go there because they knew that person was there. They just happened to stumble upon that person. That was misreported out of the gates. So it's not clear on where exactly these 12 individuals are, what their statuses are at this point in time, but we do know they were taken into custody up there in Liberty. And for some reason, I would think that this is something that, regardless of who you voted for in the last election, you would say to yourself, okay, well, certainly if it resulted in the potential arrest of an alleged child predator, how could we be against this? Who would possibly be against getting an alleged child predator off the streets if this individual happened to be working at El Potro Mexican Cafe? What if your kid bumped into this employee at the restaurant? What if, this individual was using the bathroom while your minor child was using the bathroom? God forbid, right? Like this is not political. This is, okay, good. We got a bad person potentially off the streets of Liberty, Missouri. This is great. Well, nope. This is not great, you see? Fox 4 was up there for this little event that took place on Friday night. I mean, tell me you're having a bad Valentine's Day without telling me you're having a bad Valentine's Day. I know what I'll do. I'll go to El Potro. Going to be a lot of single people there for this woke event. And this is what it sounded like from Fox 4 and its reporting on Friday night.
Unfortunately, I'm not surprised because I feared that something like this would be in the works and would come to fruition.
Laura Gitterman is an English as a second language teacher. She works with a lot of immigrants and refugees and says that her students are getting concerned.
I've had students ask me for their parents, where can they be adopted if the parents get deported? I've had students saying, I'm carrying my papers with me to school because I'm afraid ICE is coming. How many windows, how many doors do we have in school? Will I be safe?
How many windows, how many doors do we have in school? Why? Are students talking about fleeing ICE? I mean, fleeing law enforcement is illegal, number one. And number two, why don't you stop scaring your students? You know as well as I do that if ICE was going into elementary or middle or high schools around the country and arresting people and rounding them up, it would be leading every newscast in this country. That's not happening. So why don't you do your job as a teacher, Laura Gitterman, and tell your students to calm down? If they have papers, they're not going to be dragged out of their algebra class and, thrown back in whatever Central or South American country. That's not what's going on here. Now, up in Liberty, what happened is, once again, there was a tip and there were a handful of people who were taken out of the restaurant. We're not totally clear on why exactly that happened. We do know that one person is alleged to have been a child predator. Good riddance to them. get them off the streets. And by the way, they should never be back on the streets. But having these individuals show up at the restaurant and say, yeah, I teach these kids, and oh boy, these kids are asking how many windows and doors there are in the building. For what purpose? To run away when ICE shows up for them? It doesn't even make sense. I mean, if you have papers, first off, it's not happening. Second, if it was, and you have a status to be here, well, you're not going anywhere anyway right now. It's all just emotions. It's not based in reality. It's not based in what's actually happening. It's not based in fact. But these are the kind of people that were drawn to El Potro on Friday night to what? Show their support for the restaurant having an alleged child predator on staff? It's not, I have not been to the restaurant, so I'm not here to knock it, but I'm certainly not going to go out of my way to show support for a restaurant that may have had a child predator working at the restaurant, where I'm sure that children are eating on a regular basis. Like, I'm not going to sit here and feel sympathy for that person or that business.
It is totally shutting down the livelihood of families. It is taking away parents, aunties. It is having children and other people suffer from the repercussions of generalizing and stereotyping a group of people.
I have to gather my thoughts sometimes. That way,
I wasn't aware there was any generalizing or stereotyping going
I wasn't
on.
aware of that either.
Okay.
I was not aware
At least
of
as
that.
I understand the definition of the word.
No, I was not aware of that either.
Yeah.
I want to play that clip one more time because there's so many different angles to a 12-second clip here.
It is totally shutting down the livelihood of families. It is taking away parents, aunties. It is having children and other people suffer from the repercussions of generalizing and stereotyping a group of people.
Let's talk about other people suffering from the repercussions. Has this teacher up in the Northland who talked to Fox 4, was she offended by how Laken Riley's family has had to deal with the repercussions of open border policies and sanctuary cities that resulted in her daughter getting killed on a University of Georgia running trail? Have we talked about those people who are suffering? Is the suffering of American citizens part of the conversation here and part of the equation here, or do they not count? Do they not matter? When you talk about shutting down the livelihood, being an American is a privilege. Working in America is a privilege. Working in America is not a right, especially if someone has broken the law to achieve it. And that's how it should be, and that's how it's going to remain, at least for the next couple of years.
I like to bring up the generalities that go with all cases when children are separated from parents. See, that happens here in America to American citizens every day when they're arrested for DUIs, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a general thing, and it is never specific to the incident.
It's a great point.
They like to bring that one up.
Yeah,
Separating.
I mean, how many parents have been separated from kids in Kansas City because their parents committed crimes? Happens all the time.
Well, it'll go on today.
Yeah, it'll happen today in this town. I guarantee it, right? And just know, too, that any of these people organizing these little events at El Potro in Liberty or anywhere else, the American people aren't buying it. Poll came out last week from CBS. It had Donald Trump's approval at 53%. But guess what? His deportation policy has a 59% approval. His deportation policy is more popular than he is individually. So replaying and reusing the playbook from 2017 is not going to work. People saw what a failure the border was the last 4 years. And for a lot of people, they got red-pilled by it. They realize it's bad for America. It's bad policy. It doesn't mean everybody involved is a bad person. There's a nuance to this. I know some aren't interested in nuanced conversations. It does not mean everyone who came here illegally is a bad person. That's not the accusation. But you have to have standards. You have to have laws. And guess what? If you don't abide by those laws and abide by those standards, then you have a lawless country and a lawless society. And people are not on board with this shtick that people are trying to push, whether it's at El Potro or anywhere else in the country. Coming up next on KCMO, our buddy Mike Thompson, Kansas State Senator, he is going to be here at the bottom of the hour on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. But next, one of the most popular trash TV shows had one of the great woke moments I have ever seen. We will play that for you next on KCMO Talk Radio.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
You guys ever watch Love is Blind? Have you ever seen that show? I'm guessing John has not.
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I have not seen
I
it.
know of.
My wife has watched it,
Oh, okay.
but
So
I've not watched it with her.
you're aware of it at least.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So with Valentine's Day in the rearview mirror, maybe you are by yourself, but just know it could always be worse. All right? You could always be this guy on Love is Blind. Before I play this clip, I'll just set the stage in case you're not familiar with the show on Netflix that has become one of their biggest hits when it comes to like original series that they're doing on Netflix. Basically what the show is they take, give or take 20 young people, 10 guys, 10 women, and they date each other without ever seeing each other. They basically talk to each other through different rooms. But the idea is you propose to somebody and you fall in love without ever seeing the person. So the question is, well, is love really blind? Or once you get into the real world, you propose, you then get to see the person, and then you spend like 30 days living with them until you're supposed to get married. And then you go to the altar and you either say yes or you say no. So it's an interesting concept. I mean, I've seen it. And listen, it's great trashy television if you're in the mood for that. And sometimes after a week of, being here and spending time with John and Mark, trashy television is not the worst thing in the world.
Oh, I thought you were leaving the trashy TV behind for something a little more highbrow there.
No. Listen, sometimes my brain has to shut off. So I will deal with it. It's awful, though. It's absolutely awful. The people on the show are never all that bright. There's a reason they're trying to be reality TV stars. And also, Netflix does quite a job making the show in general fairly woke. But once again, if you get over that, it's just mindless. But this was all time. I saw this over the weekend, and I did not see this myself. I saw the clip on social media. And the most recent one was in Minneapolis, home of George Floyd. So naturally, these two individuals are dating each other. Remember, they can't see each other. They're on either side of a wall. And they're on a date. And this young woman, they both happen to be white, I think that's notable here, goes off on this young guy about how he doesn't properly support George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. And the dude is like totally caught off guard. He clearly doesn't care about politics. He's just trying to find a wife. And needless to say, if this, was a date that you were on, it might go a little bit differently because this guy, man, he was such a sucker. Let's roll the tape. Here it is.
But no, I'm falling in love with you.
I love hearing that from you. Thank you.
I know that we can have so much fun together, but I think we should talk about some things. Maybe having an idea about politics and like what we think about some controversial things. Like I think that's really important.
I agree.
I grew up in a conservative household. But yeah, like I really didn't get into politics, or like I didn't get interested until Trump took office and George Floyd.
I'm like kind of ignorant towards that stuff. Like I didn't vote in the last election. Like as long as I don't know, it's not gonna, do much. So
That is so annoying.
I'm sorry.
So George Floyd, that obviously hit home because George Floyd happened in Minneapolis. What are your thoughts on Black Lives Matter?
Like I'm not one way or another. I just kind of keep out of it.
I think it's very valuable and important to think about those things. And knowing you, it's not like you're actively like racist, but I personally believe what happened to George Floyd and everything else that happened, I don't think that's right at all.
Yeah.
What's so important is to speak up for things that are happening around us, right? Like our voice really does matter.
Yeah. I've just kind of been staying out of it.
I don't like those answers.
Run, buddy, run! Run!
She's trying to white guilt him.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, that is your classic white guilted, indoctrinated college graduate on the dating scene. And that poor chump is just sitting there taking it. First, I felt bad for him. Then I'm like, dude, would you grow a pair already, please? Man. Imagine being on a date. And that's why, listen, Kate and I have been together 17 years coming up this spring. And I never had to deal with this insanity of the dating world the last several years. And I'm so glad I haven't, because could you imagine going on a date and that conversation comes up? So what do you think of George Floyd? Well, you know what I think? I think it's time for you to buy your own dinner and drinks, and I'll see you never if that ever came up. And I was on a date like that. And that guy's just sitting there, I'm not that political. I try to stay out of it. It's like, buddy, run. There's no choice, okay? She will be indoctrinating you in no time. So just be glad. Whether you had a great Valentine's Day or not, at least you're not him. Coming up, with the weather set to be in the negatives this week, what does it mean for our energy policy? Mike Thompson on that and more next.
It's Mundo in the Morning. Now on FM at 95.7. Set a preset on your radio. KCMO Talk Radio.
I always enjoy resetting this conversation with our next guest and good friend, former meteorologist here in Kansas City, Mike Thompson. He is now a state senator out of Shawnee. He is joining us on KCMO 95.7 FM, and that conversation is around our energy policy and during a week like we are about to endure in Kansas City, which includes up to 6 inches of snow tonight into tomorrow, followed by potentially record-setting cold. -4 on Wednesday morning, -11 on Thursday morning, -2 on Friday morning. It's important to know that the people pushing certain energy policies don't actually want you to be warm during days like this. Isn't that right, Mike Thompson? Good morning.
Yes, exactly. Well, I think they have maybe investments in flights south. They want you to jump on a flight to the Bahamas or something. I'm sick of this stuff. Good news is, though, I think we're in a little donut hole. We're not going to get as much snow. These models are going nuts. I was just looking at them. So the heaviest will go south of us, but it's still going to be enough to be a pain in the old tires tomorrow morning.
Oh, so you still put on that meteorologist hat to look at these weather forecasts. And what are you seeing right now?
Well, it's kind of a weird deal because it'll be kind of like that last snow. It's going to be very light and fluffy. In this case, the upper level low circulation goes so far to the south. Heaviest snow is going to be in southern Kansas. So I would imagine up in this area, along either side of I-70, 2 or 3, maybe 4 inches, something like that is what it looks like. It's more jet dynamics than anything. And so, it's not going to be the amount of snow, it's the type of snow, because that light, icy snow packs down real easily and causes problems. So it's not going to be deep, but it's going to be awfully cold. And so you'll have some slick stuff to deal with, I'm afraid, during the day tomorrow. So, yeah, not happy.
Happy?
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, and you're right. I mean, on these days when it's cold like this, first of all, solar panels are covered with snow. So Shazam, they're not producing anything. And then you've got the wind. Usually when it's bitterly cold, there's not any wind. And so it's all coal plants and gas plants. And, the Southwest Power Pool, we're part of that Southwest Power Pool, was before our utilities committee here, I think about a week and a half ago. And they were telling us, well, son of a gun, there's just not enough of this wind and solar power. We would really like to have more base load out there, but nobody's building coal plants because the Obama war on coal has killed any chance of building new coal plants. So we're all relying on our one nuclear plant, Wolf Creek, which during those cold time periods is operating 100% capacity. It's full out as much as it can run. And so then the gas comes online. And you recall during Winter Storm Uri, there was a lot of speculation on the gas. It drove the price from $2.50 a unit all the way to $625. And so you get the gas speculation, and it can bankrupt municipalities very, very quickly. So there are price spikes involved with gas, but that's where we're going. We're going to be like Germany, which is, 40, 50 cents a kilowatt hours as opposed to what we're paying right now. It's going to bankrupt people unless we can get smart and change our energy policy.
So what do you want to see? There are things that sounds like maybe can be done on the state level we'll talk about. But from a federal policy perspective, to get off of this song and dance of green energy that is not working out for a multitude of reasons, certainly doesn't work out well when we get these historic cold snaps.
Right.
What would you like to see the federal government and the Trump administration do on this front?
I'd like to see them kill all subsidies for wind and solar and green energy, because then they have to compete on a level playing field with coal and gas and nuclear, who are not subsidized anywhere close to these things. And so you would see the investment going back toward these reliable energy sources just by getting rid of those subsidies. And
could they do that tomorrow, or do they have to pass legislation for that?
They would probably have to pass legislation because there was a lot of subsidies, 700 some billion in the Inflation Reduction Act.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would have to repeal the Inflation Reduction Act, first of all, and then just wipe it out because there's no reason. These are now mature industries, the wind and the solar. They are, if they were able to stand on their own, they would have a long time ago, but they continue to rely on these subsidies. So we're paying for all of that, and we're paying to destabilize our grid to the point that we're requiring now more what they call marginal reserve capacity, meaning the folks who are operating these coal and gas plants and nuclear plants are now required to add additional generating resources to the mix to compensate for the wind and the solar, which is so variable. And so they have to pass that cost along to you. So the reason your electric rates are going up is because of that additional generation requirement. And that the SPP just told us last week, that's going to go up to 16%. And I'd heard that it could go as high as 25. They were hesitant to say anything, but that's a rumor we'd heard. So that's a huge cost increase just because, or just so that we can have wind and solar online.
Is there anything like, and I'm asking this from a naive perspective. I realize this might sound ridiculous to an expert like yourself or anybody else in this field, but can you guys as a Kansas legislature just create, and I know we don't like incentives because we don't want to give an unfair advantage, but just in the wake of how coal and these other industries have been crushed over the last 15, 20 years, can you guys incentivize coal plants to, operate in Kansas to help this and also build the economy on that front in Kansas? Is that even feasible? Is that an option or no?
It's really hard to do because the coal producers and the people who would build those plants, somebody like an Evergy, for example, or big public utility, is scared to death that, if we don't pass some legislation at the federal level to change things for the EPA rules and things of that nature, that, the pendulum will swing back. The Trump will be here for 4 years, hopefully a lot longer. And that would give them a little more confidence that they're not going to get undermined by somebody coming in like a Biden or an Obama once again and turning it back. And then they're all, they're back in the same place. So it's very, very difficult for us because we've asked those questions. We'd like more base load here. We'd like more nuclear here. But the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has such onerous, hoops that you have to jump through to get a new nuclear plant. It's crazy because these small modular nukes are going to be the wave of the future. But they still have the same requirements. We have these big data centers that they're proposing to bring in, but we don't know how we're going to produce the energy necessary for that. They may require one of those data centers takes the equivalent energy of one coal plant. So, or one gas plant just to run those data centers. So that's a problem. That's why people like Bill Gates, who is probably the most evil man on the planet, is looking at resurrecting 3 Mile Island so he can have nuclear power for his data centers. It's crazy. So
what's good? It's good for me, but not for thee.
Exactly.
Last thing I want to ask you about here, Mike Thompson. I know that Trump promised to end offshore wind, which is these wind turbines that are sitting in the ocean. But we've got them, of course, around Kansas and Missouri as well. Wind in general, is that the one right now that if you could end any of them, is that the least effective and efficient? Also because of the issues that it causes here in Kansas and Missouri amongst neighbors. I know you're well aware of all that nonsense. So is that the worst of the bunch right now or no?
We've got more of it than we do solar, and therefore it is a bigger problem. The wind is a big issue. There's no plan for decommissioning the wind that we've got. They will say there is, but the money isn't there.
What do you mean decommissioning?
Well, that means when those things reach the end of their life, there's no money there to tear them down and restore the land back to the agricultural use that it was originally intended for. And they'll tell you that they've got the money, but for decommissioning or taking down and restoring the land with one of those turbines, I'd estimate it about $2 million per.
Wow.
And we've got close to 5 million or 5,000 of those turbines, just under 5,000 of those turbines across Kansas. So we're talking, $10 billion, and that would be half the state budget. There's not enough money out there to do it, and that's why in California, for example, they leave them in a state of disrepair and then just build a new wind turbine right next to them. So, if we want to look at those things for years to come in broken down states, then that's what we're going to. In fact, I've got a bill that requires bonding for those turbines for decommissioning. I'm going to run again. I've got 2 or 3 different bills to try to root out the corruption and that sort of stuff, so that county commissioners, for example, who might have a vested interest in these projects, are forced to recuse themselves from the approval of those projects, so that they don't benefit from them directly or indirectly. So that's Senate Bill 66, and hopefully we'll have a hearing on that in the next couple of weeks.
And is that a problem here, just in certain parts of Kansas, where county commissioners are on the take for these wind turbines?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
It absolutely is. Yeah, and you can go to any of these small communities where they've had these, and there's suspicions and there's allegations, and these guys hide how they're giving, in some cases, these developers gifting a lease to a commissioner or a commissioner's family member in return for favorable approval of these projects. It's bad.
Wow.
It is not good, and it's been going on for quite some time.
Well, you keep up the good fight. You keep up that good fight, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, as always, for the time. Safe travels out to Topeka this morning.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm already here. I'm sitting in my office right now.
Good. Well, I'm glad you got there in one piece, and we appreciate you, Mike.
Thanks, Pete.
All right, Mike Thompson, State Senator out of Shawnee, an expert on that topic on KCMO Talk Radio. As we get pounded with that just severe cold, we could have 3 straight days of record cold temps across Kansas City. Next 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, the worst, when it's going to be minus 11. That's real temp. That's not wind chill when you wake up Thursday morning. The good, the bad, and the ugly from the weekend we will get to next on KCMO Talk Radio.
On Monday's Guy Benson Show, U.S. Senator Tom Cotton, Republican of Arkansas, will join the program. So will women's rights activist Riley Gaines. Coming up at 2 o'clock on KCMO.
Happy Monday. We're here on a President's Day before the snow comes back later tonight into tomorrow and the frigid cold crushes Kansas City in the days ahead. So with that, let's go.
It's time for the good, the bad, and the ugly on KCMO Talk Radio. Now on 95.7 FM.
Well, the good from the weekend, the best thing I saw came on X, and it was a compilation of quotes from none other than Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And I kid you not, this is absolutely outstanding work by the Trump team. And these are direct quotes. This is not like artificial intelligence. I know nowadays you have to be like, well, is that real or is that not? These are quotes from Obama and Biden while they were in office talking about cutting government waste, which used to be a universally admirable thing to do in the federal government. Being a good steward of the taxpayer dollars. Now it's like right-wing craziness or something, despite the fact that Obama and Biden were saying the very same things. Now, they failed on this front, but they were at least saying the same things not all that long ago.
Budget reform is not an option. It's a necessity.
The American people are entitled to transparency.
We can't sustain a system that bleeds billions of taxpayer dollars on programs that have outlived their usefulness or exist solely because of the power of politicians, lobbyists, or interest groups.
They're entitled to be able to figure out where their dollars are going, and they're entitled to accountability to make sure that we're using the dollars for what we said it was for.
We are going to go through our federal budget, as I promised during the campaign, page by page, line by line, eliminating those programs we don't need and insisting that those that we do need operate in a sensible, cost-effective way.
What should be easy is getting rid of the pointless waste and stupid spending that doesn't benefit anybody.
We hope to be instilling an entire new culture that not only our administration, but every succeeding administration will in fact pursue.
No amount of waste is acceptable, not when it's your money.
If I just read those quotes to you and told them that they were from Donald Trump, people would melt down. But I play those clips, and they're from Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And I will share that in just a couple of minutes on X at Pete Mundo, so that way you can see it there. And you can share it, because I think that's the kind of clip. Actually, I think I shared it on Saturday. I did. So it's already up there on my X page at Pete Mundo. That's the kind of stuff that you got to send to anybody in your life who thinks that the idea of cutting waste and cutting fat from the government and shrinking government with a $2 trillion deficit and $36 trillion in debt is like the worst thing and anti-American and anti-democracy, when literally up until a couple of years ago, this was something that everybody knew needed to happen. And you've got Obama and Biden like talking about it outwardly when they were in office together. And you can tell that's when Biden was VP, because he actually was coherent.
Come on, man.
Just going to say that out there as well. Now, that's the good from the weekend. The bad from the weekend. From a couple of hucksters to another, Al Sharpton on MSNBC talking about how this whole Doge thing, cutting government, it's one big threat to democracy.
One day, our children's children will read American history. And can you imagine our reading that James Madison or Thomas Jefferson tried to overthrow the government so they could stay in power? That's what we're looking at. We're looking at American history.
Overthrow the government to stay in power by shrinking the size of government? Help me figure that one out there. Please, Al.
Show some RESPICT.
Please, Al, I'm trying to wrap my head around that, my man. And I can't do it. So by shrinking government, by making it a government of the people, rather than a big bloated bureaucracy that basically plays puppet master with the politicians, somehow this is overthrowing the government. This guy has not exactly been a rocket scientist since he got on the scene, and he continues to prove that every single day. That was Al Sharpton on MSNBC. And who wants to let him know about one of Thomas Jefferson's famous quotes? The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time by the blood of patriots and tyrants. Thomas Jefferson said that. But could you imagine trying to overthrow the government with what? A smaller, slimmer government? Are you kidding me? You can't make this stuff up, man. This is now overthrowing the government to shrink the government to benefit the taxpayer. Man, they are grasping at straws. They really are. And now the ugly. The ugly came courtesy of CBS and its Sunday morning show in a just bizarre assertion from host Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation, claiming that the Nazi Holocaust occurred because free speech was weaponized in Germany. I kid you not. This is actually insane, claiming that free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide. This is in a conversation with Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday. Here's what it sounded like.
Well, he was standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide. And he met with the head of a political party that has far-right views and some historic ties to extreme groups. The context of that was changing the tone of it. And you know that the censorship
I have to disagree with
was
you.
specifically about the right.
No, I have to disagree with you. Free speech was not used to conduct a genocide. The genocide was conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime that happened to also be genocidal because they hated Jews and they hated minorities and they hated those that they had a list of people they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany. There was none. There was also no opposition in Nazi Germany. They were a sole and only party that governed that country. So that's not an accurate reflection of history.
Little Marco's come a long way, hasn't he? Wow. Putting Margaret Brennan in her place on CBS after she insisted free speech led to the Holocaust. I mean, you got to be kidding me.
I'm getting pissed now.
You've got to be kidding me. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Coming up, a Valentine's Day absolutely ruined 13th kid. We got the details next. 8:04, good morning. Happy Monday, President's Day. Glad you're here on KCMO 95.7 FM and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Well, if you had a bad Valentine's Day, it could have been worse. You could have been blown up for having a baby out of wedlock. This would be theoretically, if this is all true, your 13th child. And that is quite a way to ruin your Valentine's Day, especially when you are the most, well, I guess I don't want to say the most famous, but certainly the wealthiest person in the world. That's what happened to Elon Musk over the weekend. Friday night, he got blown up by a conservative influencer, for lack of a better word, who put a post up on X, the outlet that he owns. That's a rough go, right? Claiming that 5 months ago, she, Ashley St. Clair, gave birth to Elon Musk's 13th child. She made her announcement at 6 p.m. on Friday night. So something tells me Elon didn't send flowers. Something happened here. I don't know what it was, but this does not just conveniently drop at the end of Valentine's Day unless you want it to be out there. Ashley St. Clair writing on X, 5 months ago, I welcomed a new baby into the world. Elon Musk is the father, she writes here. I have not previously disclosed this to protect our child's privacy and safety, but in recent days, it has become clear that tabloid media intends to do so regardless of the harm it will cause. So Elon has not officially responded to this, but obviously it's not a good look for anybody. It's not. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Now, I admire what Elon Musk is doing and attempting to do with Doge. I don't admire how he's lived his personal life. If this is true, this will be his fourth baby mama. And if we're not going to celebrate it with Tyreek Hill, former Kansas City Chief, now with the Miami Dolphins, well, I'm not going to do it with Elon Musk either just because I like what he's doing. I can appreciate Tyreek Hill scoring touchdowns for the Chiefs back in the day. I can appreciate Elon Musk with Doge. Yet I can also have zero respect for either guy's ability to be a decent father, no matter how much money they have, John.
We haven't had so much interest in paternity since Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker.
Oh, that's true. Oh, that's well done and spot on. Like, Elon is not somebody that I sit there and say, well, the kid's going to be fine. I saw a lot of people on the right side of the political aisle over the weekend commenting on this on social media and saying, the kid's going to be okay. Kid's going to be fine. Wait, if you don't say that about rap stars, then you can't say it about Elon Musk. Rap stars have a lot of money. Tyreek Hill will have made hundreds of millions of dollars. It doesn't matter. You can't buy fatherhood. You can't buy having a decent upbringing where mom and dad are together and are raising you as children. Doesn't matter how much money you have. I don't care if you've got $1 billion trust fund. It's meaningless. So, and then on the other side, there's a lot of this in conservative media, especially with some of these so-called influencers, where women will say, hey, I just want a simple life and I just want the farm and the couple kids. And this girl happened to be one of them. And now she's got her second kid out of wedlock. And according to her, Elon Musk is the father. Please spare me. I know it might be good for your Instagram. I realize it might be good for your social media brand as a whole, right? But there are a lot of people in this conservative influencer world who do not live by the standards that they promote on social media. They just don't. They're out there looking to party. And listen, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. I mean, it's not illegal. I'm not here to tell you can't do that or live that lifestyle. But please don't try to then come back on social media and claim like you're all about family values. You're all about, building that family one brick at a time. That's not the case for so many of these people. Just follow them and see what they're doing in their spare time. See how they are living their lives. They're total phonies about the whole thing. So I don't know if Elon's going to address this at any point soon. I doubt he will. I'm guessing he is full steam ahead on Doge. But certainly is a rough way to end your Valentine's Day. So if you thought you had a bad day, well, just think you could have been Elon Musk. Could have been hit with, hey, I've got your 13th child, and now the whole world knows, allegedly. Now, with that, speaking of Doge, 60 Minutes did a huge piece over the weekend on this. And 60 Minutes actually shared this clip about how, and it's very typical of them. And Mark, if you could, I hate to do it on the air, but if you could double check, I don't see this clip on the screen here. 60 Minutes clip, last thing I put in this morning. So just give that a once over for me. But there was a clip from 60 Minutes last night that really, I think, stood out and was a perfect example of how people who think that Doge is like the end all of democracy and the worst thing that could ever possibly happen, and how could people who work for the government ever potentially lose their jobs? They have no self-awareness. Absolutely none. And I thought that this clip that I saw on 60 Minutes last night, that they willingly shared on social media after the fact as well, is case in point for being out of touch with the everyday and average American, John.
Did they run that through their head first when they said it, right?
That's what I mean.
Things where you're like, seriously?
This is a classic example of being stuck in your own bubble. And here's exactly what this sounded like.
People are really scared. I think that, 12 days ago, people knew where their next paycheck was coming from. They knew how they were going to pay for their kids' daycare, their medical bills, and then all gone overnight.
Stop right there. That's Christina Dry, who was fired in the USAID shutdown. Welcome to the world of everyday Americans who live like this monthly, who lose their jobs and have to figure out what to do next. Why would a government employee be absolved from that? 12 days ago, people knew where the paycheck was coming from, and they knew how they were going to pay for their kids' daycare and the medical bills, and it's gone overnight. Says every person who's ever been laid off in the history of mankind.
Most of us don't get 8 months to get out.
Well, that's the other thing.
Usually it's like, oh, bye, see ya.
Yeah, see ya. Here's a couple of weeks.
Your box.
Yeah, exactly.
Load up, Johnny.
Or you know what? We'll send you the box in the mail. Even worse.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Everyone's gotten that. I mean, trust me. In radio, those stories are never ending. They could tell me not to show up tomorrow, and I wouldn't be shocked at this point.
You could tell a radio veteran, my office wouldn't have anything in it, right? Nothing to pack up, nothing to take home. We've done this circus before.
Oh, yeah, the old song and dance. But, what was 60 Minutes going for here? Outside of projecting how out of touch they are with regular people. Let's continue with this clip.
All gone overnight.
Let's put Scott Pelley in the big voice. All gone overnight.
Christina Dry and Adam Dubard, fired this month in the chaotic shutdown of foreign aid distributed by the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. More than 8,000 USAID employees were sent home by the administration.
They're not looking for competency. They're not looking for if you're good at your job. They're looking for pure loyalty tests. And if you don't give it, you will be punished.
And they had to leave the building. And these are folks who had decades and decades of public service serving USAID across administrations, from, George Bush to Obama to the first Trump administration. And they were never able to walk back in the building again.
There was no process. No one explained to them why they were being relieved.
To my knowledge, they received an email, and then if they didn't leave the building, they were escorted out of the building.
Yeah, because everyone gets a reason for when they get laid off or fired. You know why they got laid off, Scott Pelley? Big voice. Scott Pelley sounds very serious. Peanuts for brains, but he sounds good. You know why they got laid off, Scott? Because we can't afford them anymore, chump. That's why they got laid off, because we got a $2 trillion deficit there, my man.
Try this one on. How about some real journalism where you let people know that what we've known for the last, 30 years, we're spending too much money, so there's not, no warning.
Yeah.
That's for no reason, no warning. No
warning.
It's pretty clear, dude. If you were doing your job, they would have been aware of it.
Yeah, in any other line of work, if you're running deficits or you're not meeting revenue goals, everybody in every department is kind of on pins and needles. Anyone in the private sector has probably been through that in some capacity during their working adult life, right? Dang, business isn't doing well. We're not meeting revenue goals. Profits aren't where they need to be. Boy, we're going to have some cuts here pretty soon. Not good. You'd think a government employee would at least have some semblance of acknowledgement that that's possible. But they didn't, because they think the gravy train just goes on forever. And I guess government employees are some kind of a protected class, therefore we can't do anything ever about it. And that's not how this is supposed to work. It's not how your life works, and it's not how your small business in Kansas City works, and it's not how the government should work. But for the better part of at least a generation, it's how the government has operated. And too many people settled in for a false sense of comfort that should have never existed. 913-408-7957. And on that note, there was a local gathering in the last couple of days on this front that we will share with you that involved our good friend, Emmanuel Cleaver, who I just cannot get enough of anymore. All right, this guy, as long as I can talk about him now, since he's got himself back into the forefront of the conversation in and around Kansas City, well, by golly, I'm going to do it.
You mustard moo.
I'll get you where Cleaver's been and what he did over the weekend on this front next on KCMO.
If it's happening in KCMO, it's on KCMO 95.7 FM. Here's Pete Mundo.
You muster moo.
That's right. We're here with you. 8:21. Happy Monday, President's Day. Glad you're along for the ride on KCMO 95.7 FM. Congressman Emanuel Cleaver held a listening session with federal workers late last week. And KCTV5 did a story on this over the weekend. And the headline and story goes on the note that Cleaver heard directly from those impacted by the actions of President Trump and Elon Musk. Cleaver held a listening session with federal workers and labor unions in Missouri's 5th Congressional District. And they note here they discussed what they feel are moves to undermine federal agencies and labor protections for civil servants. Cleaver said in a statement after the meeting, quote, "Civil servants are the backbone of our democracy." What? The backbone of our democracy? What is he talking about? The backbone of democracy are government employees? Like, I'm not saying you're not a part of democracy if you're one of, many government employees in the Kansas City area. There's tens of thousands of you. I'm not saying you're not part of this democratic experience, but with all due respect to you, you're not the backbone of it, and neither am I. Like, trust me, radio hosts are not the backbone of democracy in Kansas City or around the country. All right? So it's not like I'm saying I am and you're not. But you're not, because guess what? None of us are. The American people are the backbone of our democracy, not civil servants, Emanuel Cleaver. What does that even mean? Civil servants are the backbone of the democracy? We can't have democracy without government employees? What kind of absurdity is that? Cleaver went on to say here, they keep our communities safe, our economy strong, and our government accountable. Yes, we must have a larger government to keep the government accountable.
How about that?
I mean, who's the musty moo around?
You muster moo.
I mean, look in the mirror. That's the musty moo as far as I can tell. Cleaver making his farm animal noises. Mad. And the government growing does not, well, it might temporarily keep the economy strong. It's how Joe Biden got to rave about his jobs reports. The largest employer in many months during Joe Biden's 4 years in office was the government, right? The government just kept growing and made the jobs numbers look good. And what then ended up happening? What then ended up happening is that, well, you can only borrow out of this thing for so long. They were propping up the economy by basically buying jobs. The jobs weren't there in the private sector the last 4 years. They were there in the government or in government-adjacent industries. So now I got Cleaver here. And yes, of course, our men and women in law enforcement keep our community safe. That's true. But, that's it. Let's not act like, everyone that works for the government is like a cop on the streets of Kansas City, because that's certainly not true. My goodness, we know that's not the case. According to Congressman Cleaver, writes KCTV5, more than 40,000 federal workers live in the 5th Congressional District, with about 80,000 federal workers across the Kansas City region. Recent reports suggest more than 20,000 federal employees nationwide have accepted a recent offer to leave their jobs. And estimates are this could result in at least 3,000 Kansas Cityans who work for the federal government being out of work. Okay. And if they're talented, there will be a job for them somewhere in the private sector. If they have skill sets that people want in the private sector, they won't be out of work long. They won't. And if your insinuation is that, what are these poor people going to do? Then they have no skill sets that anybody wants in the free market, in which case, why are we propping them up with a government job? It's really that simple. It's not controversial. It's not like some crazy right-wing conspiracy. It's not even, I think, all that conservative of an opinion. It's just like a common sense opinion that I think most Americans would agree with. 913-408-7957. Let's go to Kansas City. That's where Jonathan is. Hey, Jonathan, good morning. You're on KCMO.
Hey, Pete. I understand, the attempt by 60 Minutes to say, hey, these workers are going to have hardships. Of course they're going to have hardships. I mean, I don't think even conservatives, if they're going to be honest, can deny that. However,
well, no, because anyone who loses their job, it's a hardship to lose your job. I mean, we all agree with that.
Right. But what I was going to say is, that's true of, as you've been saying, it's true of people in the private sector too. It doesn't mean it can't happen. It's going to happen, which is why, I've been through several jobs where they eliminate positions, eliminate departments, and sometimes it was my job, sometimes it was somebody else's. And what I learned from that is, people got to Dave Ramsey it up, man. They got to have an emergency fund, so that you don't have nothing. If your paycheck stops coming because the job stops coming. And then Dave's real big at, hey, by sundown you start delivering pizzas, you do whatever. And, takes whatever job in the meantime, and then hopefully you can get a better job down the road. But that's a lot better than just sitting there and being like, woe is me.
Yeah, man. I mean, and listen, we've all done it. We've all been between jobs. We've all had to supplement our incomes. I've done it. You've done it, it sounds like. And it's just part of being an adult. It's part of being a functioning member of society, right? I mean, there are times when I was early in my career doing this where I'd be doing radio shifts during the overnight hours and going to a golf course the next morning. Caddy 18 holes. Feels like a lifetime ago because, I had a lot more energy in my early 20s, it seems like. Now these 3 girls I have wear me down every single day. I can't imagine doing it. But there was plenty of stuff like that I would do all the time, or vice versa. Do 36 holes of golf and then not playing it, carrying the bags around, and then rolling into a radio shift for the overnight. I mean, that's just what you did if you wanted to get where you wanted to get to. You had to supplement income in some way, right? You got to pay the bills. It's how life works. But this notion of a protected class of workers because you collect a government check is complete and utter BS. And if that's the case that Emmanuel Cleaver and others want to take, if that's the hill they want to die on, please do it. Because I don't believe it's going to work out for you with regular common sense voters on the left and the right. Luke Doris, KCTV5 meteorologist, will give us the details on the week to come next.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
Well, usually when our friend Luke Doris is on the show, the chief meteorologist at KCTV5, it's not because we have great news for you and we're going to tell you how it's going to be like sunny and 20 degrees above normal. I mean, that would be nice, but that's not why we usually focus on our chief meteorologist, Luke Doris. So he's back, and I will let him be the bearer of bad news. Good morning, Luke. How are you, my friend?
Pete, good morning. We got to fix that, man. You're going to have me on. Be a bit of a positive note one of these days.
That would be
we've
nice.
Got 70s and yeah, let's do the first 70s and sunshine. Like, I want to talk about some good stuff. I'm tired of this.
I do too. I don't know how to have the conversation beyond, woo, this is going to be great weather, get outside. But I will figure that out because I just don't want to keep these conversations going in a negative light. So I will figure out a way to do that. I promise you we'll have that conversation this spring. But in the meantime, let's start with the snow coming, I guess, tonight, tomorrow. What's our timeline? What are we looking at and how much?
Well, first off, brother, I worked in Miami where it was 75 and sunshine all the time. So we could stretch that out over 2 minutes, no problem. But the snow. So today we got a little bit. That's pretty well wrapped up. That was a morning band that we had come through. They got a couple inches up by St. Joe. But for us, that little dusting that we got should be it. You might see a few flurries the rest of the day, but that's pretty well it. So what we're looking at with the storm is going to be roughly midnight tonight through midnight tomorrow night. So we're looking at about 24 hours of what's going to be a light to moderate snow. This isn't just going to come dumping down on us, but it is rather prolonged. And how much snow are we going to get? It's going to be heavier south and lighter to the north. And what I'm going with is 2 to 5 inches in Kansas City is what I see right now. So that's kind of a big range, but generally just think about 3-4 inches looks to be likely for the metro. But there's a caveat here. And the caveat is the type of snowflake that we get. Our computer forecasts are higher than my forecast because what they're saying is that we're going to get a type of snowflake that stacks higher. So if you think of bread, if you've got bread dough in one pan, and just say you've got in one pan and then another pan there's bread dough. You put one of those in the oven. One of them, that one's going to rise, right? The bread dough that goes into the oven, and that's going to be higher than the bread dough that didn't go into the oven. So you have the same amount of dough. It's just that one of them is a little different. It's got air injected into it. The yeast causes it to rise, and that would stack higher. Our computer forecasts are saying that we're going to get a type of snowflake that will stack up more than normal. And if that happens, you're looking at about 6 inches. So the reason why I'm not biting on that is because this air is going to be so cold that you get dry air pockets that the computer forecasts often don't see until the last minute. And those dry air pockets can kill your snow totals. They can really shave them in half. So it looks to be about half of what the computers are trying to tell us, just from experience and seeing this kind of setup before. But I want everybody to know it's not off the table that we're up to about 6 inches in Kansas City. If that happens, I think that's less likely, and that we're more likely to be in that 3, 4, 5 inch range. To our south, we could get up to 8 inches, and to our north, it's probably just going to be a couple inches.
So what's that line? What's that 8-inch line that you're looking at?
That would be you run south of Harrisonville.
Okay.
You start getting in the 6, 7, 8 inch range, and run that all the way down to like Garnett, Lacine, and places like that. So that's kind of the bottom of our coverage area. So that's our southern counties. So just know that if you're traveling south or if you live south and you can hear us, you're looking at more than Kansas City. So that's go ahead.
No,
go
so
ahead.
I was going to say, so it's kind of like what we dealt with last week where it was a lighter snow that resulted in a smaller total amount just because of the style of snowflake we had.
That's what happens when we get this really cold air. It tends to change the kind of snowflake that we see. And the computer forecasts get real excited about that. You've got to watch it. So, yeah, it's similar. It's going to be real light and fluffy. We're out shoveling. It's going to be light and easy to move around, so that's good. But just in my experience, when you get that type of setup, you tend to get these little needles that develop, and you get dry air pockets that just cut down on your totals. So we're thinking it's going to be a little bit less. But that's only half the story.
Yeah.
Even if we didn't have snow, we're going to have school cancellations because it's going to be the coldest air that we've had this season. We're talking record cold. It's nasty, like life-threatening kind of cold that we'll have. The high on Tuesday, the record coldest high temperature for Tuesday is 17. We're going to crush that. I mean, our high is going to be 5. We're going to have wind chills of about 20 to 25 below in the morning. So that's with your snow. It's snowing, and we've got that cold. And even in the afternoon, it feels like 15 below. And it gets even colder from there. Wednesday and Thursday, we'll have wind chills to 30 below potentially. So this is rare. You know, we don't get that cold every winter. I know last year we did it with the wild card game and the Dolphins, and we got all the frostbite from everybody being out in that. But this is rare cold, and we're going to have it for a prolonged period of time. That alone would cause school cancellation. So you combo the two, the snow with the cold, and it's a nasty stretch of weather through Friday.
Well, any other good news for us, Luke Doris, KCTV5 Chief Meteorologist? No, but let me ask you this, though. And I know that you will have good news, but hang with me here. You're right. We haven't had – this is going to be a record cold week, so I can't even take the kids out to go sledding tomorrow because it's going to be too cold for that. I mean, it's crazy. So tell me this. What is going on this winter where we are just getting these incredible cold snaps, and it's happening all over the country? Is it a La Nina, El Nino? Like, take me through that and what's happening right now this winter.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are in La Nina. We entered La Nina in the fall. And when La Nina happens, it shifts either one, La Nina or El Nino. Essentially what it means for us is it shifts the storm track, the jet stream, the flow of the weather systems. And when you have La Nina, it shifts it in such a way where Kansas City tends to be right on the line of the storm track. So you tend to get more storms. The reason why we're getting such cold air is the polar vortex. You've heard of that.
Yeah.
The polar vortex is a buzzword, but it's been there since the beginning of time. It's always there. And what that is the polar air that circulates the pole, the North Pole. And whenever that dislodges because of the shift in the jet stream, then it breaks free and you get these lobes of cold air that shoot down way farther south than the poles. And that's what keeps happening to us this winter is we keep getting that disruption in the jet stream because it's La Nina, and that allows the polar vortex to move, and then it passes that cold air down to us. And you get these just nasty – this air is straight out – I mean, if you can trace this. You can trace where your air is coming from. It's coming straight out of the North Pole. So we're going to get a taste of that.
Man, okay. And this La Nina trend – like, does it hang around for a couple of years, a few years, and then go away, or is it a year-to-year basis? You got to wait to see what happens.
Yeah, it's usually they go for a year. Sometimes you get a double tap, and they'll go for 2. So the projections are that this one will fade away, and we'll go back to neutral, just normal, later on in the spring and summer. So we'll see if that happens. That kind of forecasting is kind of on the bleeding edge of the science, so you just kind of got to wait and see. But right now it looks like this will come to an end.
Okay.
So, that will bring changes with it too. We'll be back to a typical pattern. But with all this bad news, you started to say, do you have any good news?
Yeah.
Yes.
I got a minute, so give me the good news now, Luke Doris.
So after we're past Friday, it takes time. Whenever you got air this cold, it takes time to get rid of it, to shake that. But we enter a new pattern, and the new pattern beginning on the weekend is a nice warm-up. And we look to shift from record-shattering cold for 3 days in a row to warmer than normal temperatures for the back half of February. Not just a day or two, but we'll go from highs of 5 on Tuesday to highs in the 30s by the weekend to highs in the 50s by next week. And it looks so much better. I mean, just grit your teeth and get through this stretch, and then next week we'll probably start – this will likely be our last – you never know. I'm not saying it is, but likely this is our last big shot of winter before we start seeing this pattern flip into a more spring-like setup. So that's what we're seeing right now. We don't know that it will hold, but the end of February and the beginning of March do look warm. So that's I cannot wait.
Man, from your lips, brother, from your lips. There he is, Luke Doris, KCTV5 Chief Meteorologist. All right, my man, we're going to get through the week. We'll be watching you on Channel 5, and we appreciate the time.
Anytime, man. Always appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
All right. Luke Doris does a great job. as the chief meteorologist at KCTV5. Now you know we're getting a snow blast at the Big 12 tournament or something.
And Sporting KC is saying they're not canceling their game tomorrow against Miami.
It's
which
here?
is absolutely insane. Yeah.
Please.
Come on, guys.
They're not playing soccer. What are you talking about?
That's what they said. They're not canceling it, according to my friend that has season tickets.
Oh, my gosh. They're canceling it. That's absurd.
They need to.
All right. Speaking of sports, let's have it feel like it's warm here in the studio at least, and in your home and in your car. We're going down to Arizona. Joel Goldberg is going to be here. Of course, Royals broadcaster. You got a big extension over the weekend. We got our first spring training game for the Royals later this week. Let's warm it up with Joel Goldberg next.
Hey, it's Dan Bongino. You're listening to Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, now on FM at 95.7.
Well, as we get set for what is hopefully the last blast of winter this week in Kansas City, let's go down to warm Arizona, where Joel Goldberg, Royals broadcaster, arrived last night. We've got the first spring training games later this week. He also has a new book out I will ask him about here in a few minutes, Small Ball, Big Dreams. The forward is by George Brett. So, Joel, how's that warm air treating you so far today? Good morning.
Well, good morning, Pete. I'm not going to be that obnoxious guy that says, well, I'm driving into the stadium right now and it says it's only 50 degrees out, because I'm only here for 2 days. I'm not even here for the games. So I'm going back to whatever mess we have coming Tuesday night, if I even make it back. But always good to be out here, and always good to be out here when the team is expected to do really well.
Well, yeah, exactly. You got to figure out a reason to hang around a couple more days. I mean, you just got to make something up here before you got to head home. I mean, it's going to be terrible when you get back, but we appreciate the honesty. So let's just start with this. The vibe, the feel. I know you just got there last night, but when you're going to a team that is coming off the playoffs for the first time in a decade, how does that change the feel around spring training compared to any other season when you're coming off, 60, 70 wins?
I was thinking about this question, having a thought that you might ask it without me actually being, at the complex yet. And I'm pulling in like 3 minutes. The locker room opens in about 9 minutes. So, but I think I know, because I've done this a long time, and this is my 18th season of Royals baseball. We missed 1 year of spring training during the year after COVID. And I've never, Pete, walked into a spring training, and even dating before my Kansas City years, where anyone ever said, we're going to be terrible this year. Like, this is the time of year where everyone thinks, well, maybe, like if this goes right and this goes right, maybe it all could work out. But you're not a championship team.
Mm-hmm.
The Royals know they're a championship team. That's what I'm going to see today when I walk in there. The optimism will be there just like it is every single year. It's very simply put a matter of hoping versus a matter of knowing. Nothing is guaranteed. This team will have a different look in their eyes this year than they did last year, because they got a taste of it and they know now what it looks like.
That's great. Well, over the weekend, the Royals gave Cole Reagans a new 3-year contract, $13.25 million. That broke on Friday night. So what does that move in particular mean? What does it signal? How big of a deal is that to, the casual Royals fan that's in this audience right now and hoping this team can put together another playoff season?
So in terms of numbers, it's not a big deal. In terms of the Royals and Cole Reagans, it is a big deal. And here's how so. Just a little bit of economics, and I won't go any further than that because I'm not that smart. But from a baseball standpoint, you typically will have a guy. Now, they didn't have Cole Reagans from the beginning. They traded for him. But typically a player, when they get up to the big leagues, is going to have 3 years where their salary is determined. It's determined based on those years of service, and they don't have a whole lot of control. The team has all the control. Typically, years 4, 5, and 6 is when they're going to become arbitration eligible. The team still has the rights to them, but in the end, they're going to need to come up with a fair number, or it's going to go to a judge, and that judge is going to say it's either the high number for the player or the low number. And no one totally wants that, because if the player doesn't get what he wanted, it's going to be lower than what he probably deserves. And if the team doesn't get what they wanted, it's going to be more than what they were hoping to spend. And so with Cole Reagans, he still has 3 arbitration years coming up beginning next year. We know, based on his performance last year, that a judge or the value in arbitration is going to be really, really high based on him being a Cy Young candidate. The flip side of that is that, Cole Reagans has had 2 Tommy Johns. There is injury risk. Nothing is guaranteed. He's still a younger guy with a lot of years left. It's not like he's a 32, 33-year-old. So for him, if you can get that guaranteed money, it at least offers you some security. So they come up with this deal. If he were hitting arbitration right now, it would be more. If he were hitting free agency, it will be off the charts. Not Bobby Witt Jr. or Juan Soto numbers, but it'd be really, really big. And so what this does is it gives him more money the next few years, guarantees that no matter what happens, he's going to get that 13 plus. For the Royals, what it does is it offers them cost certainty and says, okay, for this year, we're going to pay him a little more than we were going to.
Mm-hmm.
For the next 2 years of arbitration, we're going to pay him maybe less than we would, maybe not. We don't know, but we have certainty now. And then he'll have 1 more year of arbitration, and they could work on something more long-term. But this really makes everybody happy for a few years.
If he stays healthy, it's a steal.
Yeah.
Right.
And if he doesn't, it's not.
It's not
ridiculous.
yeah.
In baseball terms,
Yeah.
it's not ridiculous money. And for Cole, it gives him some nice money in his pocket right now.
Absolutely. No doubt about that. Now, Ned Yost, of course, back in the saddle, special advisor to GM J.J. Piccolo. I know you're just getting down there. You're pulled into the complex at this point. But what do you expect to see here? What do you want to learn from Ned Yost with him being back in the organization? Of course, the guy who was the manager of the World Series team a decade ago.
I think that we will, first off, anytime you can get someone with Ned's caliber and with the history that he has with the organization re-engaged, that's a good thing. I think that you'll see in some form or another, you'll see some version of that, maybe not with an Alex Gordon at some point. And some of these other guys that, whether players or, manager, were a big part of the past and have a lot to offer if and when the time is right.
Mm-hmm.
Ned retired. He got away. He said that, the excitement of last year. I remember I talked to him down in Atlanta the weekend that they clinched, and he did. He was giddy, and it was nice to see him relaxed and enjoying it. And another side of Ned, which I know exists, but when you get locked in to the season, it can be hard to have that focus. And so I think that having his opinion, having him engaged will be a good thing. But let's be honest here too. Like, this is a retirement job. I hope I'm not underselling it. If it's more, then he can yell at me. But I would imagine he'll be as involved as he wants to be, but it's not going to be an everyday thing where he's at the park. And I think that what you'll do after spring training is see him fade a little bit more into the background in a way that doesn't mean that he's not involved. It means that we're not going to see him front and center, because he knows that, that's Matt Quatraro's job. That's his team. And by the way, Ned will be happy not to do interviews every single day too.
All right, Joel Goldberg on KCMO Talk Radio. We'll wrap it up here with your new book that just came out, Small Ball, Big Dreams. The forward is by George Brett. I see the book is available right now on Amazon. People can find it there. What will they get out of this one?
A lot of inspiration. I started a motivational speaking business about 8 years ago, so I do that in the off season and even during the season, and started meeting a lot of people in and out of baseball. And I'm a storyteller. And so small ball, we know the term from baseball, the bunts, the sacrifices, the little things. I wrote one book about 4 years ago, Small Ball, Big Results, how to get there. This one is the stories of dreams. And the first chapter, it's not all Royals, but the first chapter is Lorenzo Cain. Here's a Royals icon that first started playing baseball in high school. The last chapter is Freddie Fermin, Salvador Perez's backup. About the same time Salvi was winning a World Series, Freddie Fermin. And I mean, think about this, Pete. At 19, everybody was getting interested in Lorenzo Cain because of his prowess in high school. At 19, Freddie Fermin, no one had any interest in him. He was basically walking the streets of the Dominican there from Venezuela looking for a job, and the Royals ended up taking a chance and saying, we'll put you up and let you work out. And then they thought, he's the best catcher we got here in camp. So a lot of stories like that. My friend Sarah Nauser, former Kansas City police officer, so courageously battling ALS. Just a lot of amazing stories of grit, resilience, and changing that focus when things don't go your way and finding a way to get it done.
Small Ball, Big Dreams, just dropping. Get it on Amazon right now. Joel Goldberg, Royals broadcaster in sunny, warmer Arizona. Thank you, my friend, and we'd love to talk to you again as spring training rolls along.
Anytime. Talk to you soon, Pete.
All right, there you go. Very nice job by him. We appreciate Joel Goldberg on KCMO Talk Radio. 95.7 FM. Coming up, the worst piece I read over the weekend. We'll have some fun with it next.
On Monday's Guy Benson Show, U.S. Senator Tom Cotton, Republican of Arkansas, will join the program. So will women's rights activist Riley Gaines. Coming up at 2 o'clock on KCMO.
9:05 on a President's Day Monday morning. It is good to have you here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. We're streaming, of course, on the KCMO Talk Radio app. All right, white guys, don't try too hard because you're showing your racism if you do this. New York Times, article over the weekend. The question was asked, as a white man, can I date women of color to advance my anti-racism? That's right. Now, the headline here is absurd. The article is even worse. And the question is this, and I'll get to some of the highlights, or I'd call them lowlights from the article. If you are dating somebody because of their race, and it's not because you are attracted to, let's say, that race, there are plenty of, men who are white, black, Latino, and like women who are white, black, or Latino because they like how those women look. They are attracted to that look. Travis Kelce had a look before Taylor Swift came along. That's been well noted. And it's okay to be attracted to certain looks, right? I mean, that's normal for men and for women to be attracted to certain people who look a certain way. But it is racist to be attracted to people because of how it advances your anti-racism. Let's be clear about that. So the New York Times piece, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It's somebody wrote a letter to the New York Times, and they actually printed this, so it's not satire. It's a real piece. I'm a straight white dude and recent college grad who has very progressive beliefs. Wow, I didn't see that coming.
Talk about a bombshell.
And is looking for a committed partner who in time can equitably raise a family with me. I have almost zero honest-to-goodness physical preferences. That's a lie. Let's be very clear. Everybody has physical preferences. That's what makes you a normal human being. I've dated women of various shapes and sizes, various skin, hair, and eye colors, and have been attracted to all of them. Here's what's controversial amongst my friends. I want to prioritize dating women of color. Some progressive white dude. I mean, this is right out of central casting for progressive white dude. I mean, could be right here in Kansas City, but could be in any major metropolitan area around the country. I'm after a cross-cultural relationship. I believe very strongly that one of the main ways to combat racism is through relationships. So he thinks that one of the main ways to combat racism is by being a racist. By picking his significant other due to their skin color. Not because he's attracted to them. Not because he inherently has a connection with the person. But because of their skin color. This is the same kind of excuse making that people in corporate America make when they do the DEI hiring, right? They claim we just want diversity. If you're picking somebody for anything, in part because of the color of their skin, then you are acting in a racist manner because you're holding somebody else's skin color against them negatively. That's what racism is. Now, if this guy just says, hey, I'm a progressive white dude and I love black chicks, that's great. That's cool. I love Latinos. Woo! All right, let's go. That's awesome, man. That's cool. You do you. There's plenty of guys who feel that way. They just, they're attracted to a certain type of person. Mark's going to make a drop of the I love black chicks thing I just said. I can tell he's going to do that. Don't be doing that on me. But I know you're going to do it.
Can't do it today.
I know. He's working through some computer issues in there. But I know he's going to pull that on me. I know he is. But this is controversial. So this guy whose name was withheld ends this piece by saying, both I and my hypothetical partner of color would be choosing more learning and less comfort to put forth greater effort and practice more listening than we otherwise would in a culturally homogeneous, committed relationship. And one of the main ways that I hope to combat racism individually is by leveraging my own privilege. Oh, my God. What an insufferable douche this guy is. Leveraging my own privilege, economic, family connections, education for people of color, including any biracial children we bring into the world. Wow, aren't you just a freaking hero? My gosh, buddy, stop patting yourself on the back. It must be so hard. I'm gonna take some poor woman of color and I'm gonna lift her up and lift up my biracial kids. My gosh. If you're a woman of color and you run into this guy, you're like, hey, buddy, I don't need you. This clashes directly with the feminist mentality and the rah-rah, I can do whatever I want on my own mentality that also exists amongst progressives.
No, Pete, I listen to rap songs. I'm down. I know what's up on the street. That's exactly where this comes from, right?
Oh, my gosh, this is horrible. Goes on the note here. Here's my question, writes the name withheld reader to the New York Times. Despite my well-meaning anti-racist principles, anti-racism is racism. Stop. Stop with this nonsense. Is this preference, as friends have suggested, wrong, insensitive, or somehow racist itself? Yes, you are a racist. I hate to break it to you, brother, but you are a racist. 913-408-7957. All right, James and Shawnee, what do you make of this, my man?
Well, my wife is black, and I've gotten into several discussions with progressives and the whole Black Lives Matter movement. And when I mention that, they say that I'm tokenizing her. So there's really no winning in this.
So when you cut out there, so you said when you mention that you are against Black Lives Matter and you have a black wife, progressives tell you that your wife is just what, your token black wife?
Yeah. You can't win. You cannot win.
Oh,
like
man.
If you say it's impossible for me to be racist, I married a black woman, they say, oh, you're tokenizing her. So you can't, there is no winning with these people.
Oh, man, that's great. Now, of course, what does your wife make of all this? What does she say?
She says there's no winning. Like, you can't win. I've been called racist. I've been called everything under the sun. And then when I mention that I have a black wife, now I'm tokenizing her and using her as a tool to prove that I'm not racist.
Oh, man.
It's like a circular argument that just goes nowhere.
Oh, my gosh. That is hysterical.
And this might be radical in 2025, but I did not marry her because she was black.
No, you married her because you loved her, right? And you were also attracted to her.
She saved my life.
Mm-hmm. Well, bless you, man. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you, James.
Thanks, Pete.
Oh, I needed that laugh. The guy gets told that his black wife is just being used as a token since he is against Black Lives Matter. Oh, and let me share with you the response from the New York Times. This was a piece that was written by Kwame Anthony Appiah. He wrote back to the unnamed New York Times reader who wanted to know if he just targeted black women to become his wife, or I should say just any woman of color, to be an anti-racist, whether or not that was right or if that was racist. Well, it's racist, but of course the New York Times is not going to say that. The New York Times responding to him here in this piece, writing, "Your devotion to self-improvement is impressive.
I'm getting pissed now.
Like a dish of quinoa and kale that you may have once forced down and now actively enjoy. A woman of color could raise your game, supplying something like anti-racist roughage." What? Are we comparing women of color to quinoa? I'm confused. You'd be using, oh my God, I can't continue this. I can't keep going here. This is ridiculous. This is absolutely, tell this guy that he's a racist. That's what he is. Okay? I'm done. Dave in Overland Park, go.
Yeah, hi. I saw 3 ads on TV the other day, and it was with a black gentleman with a white woman. And I see this often. Many black men prefer white women, so it can go the other way, too. I don't know what that says about that situation, but...
Well, you're missing the point, though, Dave. The point is this. It's fine for a black man to like white women. It's fine for a white man to like black women. That's fine to have that attraction. But specifically picking them not because you're attracted to them physically, but rather because you think you're doing some heroic act of anti-racism, that's different. You see what I'm saying?
I wonder, though, if the black men are not attracted to black women. They're more attracted to white women, and what does that say?
Well, that's kind of speaking in, I don't know, that's kind of speaking in generalities, isn't it? Wouldn't you say the same thing if a white man wanted to be with a black woman? Are they not attracted to white women? What does that say about white women?
Yes, every individual needs to be assessed on their own circumstances. You're right.
Yeah, that's kind of how it goes. So I'm not here for the generalities. It doesn't matter, right? You can be attracted to whoever you want to be attracted to. That's America. It's 2025. You like black women? That's great. You like Latinas? That's great. Not Latinx. We're not doing the Latinx Latinx thing. We're not doing any of that. All right? We're leaving that off the table.
Red flag.
Yeah, a major red flag.
Carlos.
Yeah, we're not doing any of that. No way, no how. Carlos becomes Carlita, and then everything is all thrown out of shape. I'm not going down there. But it's cool to be attracted to whoever you're physically attracted to, and then you find the personality that matches you. But this guy for the New York Times writing in and being like, I want to have a woman of color as my wife, not because I'm attracted to that, but because I want to, as a white progressive, be anti-racist. That is inherently racist. Unbelievable. Caller of the day is coming up at the bottom of the hour on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Meantime, Mayor Lucas is very concerned about what Doge is doing in Kansas City. We've got those details next. All right, you're sitting here on a Monday morning on President's Day, and you're like thinking about that new tub or shower, right? Well, if so, there's only one name to know in Kansas City, The Plumbing Pro. Steve and his team for over 40 years have been the new Bath Pro, and you probably see all the national personalities promoting tub and shower replacements on TV. But the Plumbing Pro is the local alternative to those national tub and shower replacement ads. And right now, get $2,000 off and 12 months same as cash with approved credit with Pete's deal at The Plumbing Pro. Save money and time. The Plumbing Pro, easy to work with, local guys, local operation, low stress, and a free consultation. From start to finish, they could be in and out in as quick as a couple of days. But whatever you need with The Plumbing Pro, easy to care for tub and shower solutions, they will make sure that they take great care of you. The Plumbing Pro is offering this Pete's deal. $2,000 off and 12 months, same as cash. 816-763-8200. Or the best way, the website, theplumbingpro.com. That's theplumbingpro.com.
You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM.
Oh, well, Mayor Lucas, very concerned about what Elon Musk is doing with Doge, trying to cut into the $2 trillion annual deficit that we have in this country. And the mayor put this up yesterday. It did get picked up by Channel 9. And you tell me, if you are someone who is maybe a regular at the farmer's market in the Ivanhoe neighborhood in Kansas City. I have not been to the farmer's market here, but the Ivanhoe Neighborhood Council's contract with the USDA was canceled, according to Executive Director Alana Henry. Henry announced the cancellation on Facebook, stating the program's focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion was the reason. So Mayor Lucas goes on social media, and I found it fascinating how, once again, this is very much like Sharice David's email last week that she sent to us on the Kansas side of the state line. She's our congressperson over there. And her email was not targeting Trump. The email never mentioned Trump. Her email was all about Elon. Same thing here with the mayor. The mayor responding and writing, cuts by Elon Musk continue to devastate American communities like Kansas City. Ivanhoe recently had funding eliminated that supports urban food production, backyard gardeners, local growers, an inner city farmers market, and resources to provide healthy food to young mothers. Lucas said the city will work with Ivanhoe on support. The Ivanhoe Neighborhood Council was founded in 1967. The group's most recent tax filings show a $2 million budget. Well, I would love to look under the hood at that $2 million budget and see what it's doing, see who it's helping, see who's benefiting exactly. And you know what? I'm okay with this. There are great organizations that are helping feed people in Kansas City every single day. Harvesters happens to come to mind. But I know there are many others, and you can probably call in and share them or text in at 913-4087-957, right? This is, unfortunately, the sledgehammer that needs to happen in the federal government. It needs to happen. It has been almost 100 years since FDR and the federal government really started to grow and balloon out of control. There's no easy way to do it. And frankly, if you do this in a slow way, it's never going to happen. And that's what Donald Trump realizes. He's got a couple of years to really do this, to pare this thing back. And it's always, anytime something is cut from government, and you're hearing this, and it's just becoming white noise at this point, it's always under the guise of, oh, we're going to have people homeless on the streets and people aren't going to be able to eat. And oh my gosh, you can't possibly do this. Every single program now becomes the most important program ever, whether it's, the Ivanhoe Neighborhood Council in Kansas City or anything else in Washington, D.C. That's always how this gets framed. And you know what? Frankly, if there are people who are backyard gardeners in this neighborhood, well, you know what? Keep running your backyard garden. I'm not sure why the federal government needs to be subsidizing it in any way. I'm not sure why that's anything that they should be doing. So on the text line, 913-408-7957 is how you join us on 95.7 FM. And, of course, streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. I'm just kind of like, okay, it is what it is, John. I'm not going to sit here and lose all that much sleep about it.
I know in this business, white noise is a term that means like static, like shh. Right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean some kind of a racial judgment when you say this is a lot of white noise.
No, please don't take it that way.
That's not a liberal judgment. That's
a
technical term. There's white noise, pink noise. They've got all these sleep things now, the green noise and brown noise. So, yeah.
And
just one of the colors.
I do see that there is is that an Aldi right there? In Ivanhoe? I think I was saying Ivanhoe, and I apologize for that. Not a place I've spent a lot of time here in town. But either way, I'm just sitting here and looking at it and saying to myself, why is that a priority, and why should that not be canceled in an era when we have $36 trillion in debt? And if it's that important, Kansas City can subsidize it itself. If the city thinks it's critical to feeding people, then you know what? That's on them. That's it. And you know what's interesting? I saw this over the weekend with obviously the sledgehammer that is being taken to the federal government. Have you seen the increase in houses being listed in Washington, D.C.? It is unbelievable what is happening right now. Washington, D.C. has seen unemployment filings surge 36% in 1 week to 3 times the 2024 average. Over the last 6 weeks, unemployment filings are up 55%, now above the 2008 levels. So this is an area of the country that has 4 of the top 7 wealthiest counties in America. And these counties have no major industries of note other than the federal government, lobbying the federal government and selling things to the federal government. This is exactly the reason that the sledgehammer needs to come down on Washington, D.C. and the federal government as a whole. When 4 of your top 7 wealthiest counties in America are right around Washington, D.C. That's Loudoun County, Virginia, Falls Church County, Virginia, Fairfax County, Virginia, and Howard County, Maryland, you've got a problem. And now you also are seeing the listings on homes skyrocket the last week or so as well, and that's a good thing. The concentration of wealth and power being right there in Washington, D.C. is not what the American people signed up for. And it was only getting worse the last 4 years. While people who lobby the government and work for the government were getting very wealthy, and the average American in Kansas City and elsewhere was getting absolutely screwed by inflation that they were artificially creating by printing government money that we did not have. So if you're looking for someone to cry me a river, it's not going to be here. And I know it's not going to be with many of you either. Our caller of the day is coming up next on 95.7 FM KCMO.
On Monday's Guy Benson Show, U.S. Senator Tom Cotton, Republican of Arkansas, will join the program. So will women's rights activist Riley Gaines. Coming up at 2 o'clock on KCMO.
Rockhurst's own Tim Kaine, he's now a U.S. Senator from Virginia. He went on Fox News Sunday, which airs at 10 o'clock Sunday morning here on KCMO. And they're trying so many different angles and things, and they're just throwing stuff against the wall to figure out how to combat Doge while seeming like the moderate good guys or good gals here. And it was Tim Kaine, to whose credit, is going on Fox News Sunday, but is now making it seem like he's just trying to combat Doge to protect the veterans.
Versus outrage about some of the stuff that they're uncovering.
Yeah, I think my outrage is about who they're hurting. I don't care about the bromance. Who cares about the bromance? I don't like letting unelected officials, post. Yesterday, the Doge guys post classified information on their website, and they had to realize, we didn't realize that agency was a classified agency. You shouldn't let people run rampage through offices that have classified information. And again, I view this in Virginia from the perspective of we're a veteran-heavy state. There's a war on veterans. When they're slashing in the VA, and when 30% of the federal workforce is veterans, compared to like 2 to 3% of the civilian workforce, you do indiscriminate cuts. I'll tell you, it hurts. It hurts veterans.
Do you?
Okay. All right. That is Tim Kaine, Rockhurst's own, on Fox News Sunday. So 2 parts of that. First off, Doge called him out when he said that those guys were posting classified information on their website. Doge put up on X last night, this is inaccurate. The referenced classified information is actually public FedScope data posted publicly by the Office of Personnel Management in March of 24. So this was posted by Joe Biden's administration for public record in March of last year. So that right there, bad job by Tim Kaine, not true. The second part of this is I'm just here to fight for the veterans and make sure the veterans keep their jobs. Oh, come on. Please. Where were you when the men and women in the military were getting fired for not taking a shot? And I mean the COVID shot, not getting shot at. I didn't see Tim Kaine fighting to make sure that the men and women who were willing to fight and die for their country were suddenly losing jobs, losing pensions, because they didn't get a COVID shot. Now Tim Kaine is suddenly looking out for veterans who are federal workers. And let's add this to the conversation as well while we're having it. If you are somebody who is, before we get to our caller of the day, if you are somebody who served this country and now you're working for the federal government, if you happen to lose your job and you have a skill set that the private sector finds desirable, you will probably end up making more money than you were making in your government job. Do you know how desirable it is in many industries to have veterans? If nothing else, you know they're going to show up every day. You know that they're going to have a mentality that is going to be good for your team and good for your business, most likely. There's a lot of industries where being a veteran, having that background is desirable. Even if it doesn't directly apply to the job that you're applying for, people will say, you know what, this guy or gal's a veteran. They serve this country. I can teach them certain things about this job they may not know. And then if you have certain skill sets from your time as a veteran, and then maybe working in defense or intelligence or whatever it might be, do you know how much money you can make in the private sector doing that stuff today? The notion that if Doge does end up firing people who are veterans, okay. I mean, and if you're a veteran and you can't find a job after being fired from your government job, kind of proves the point, doesn't it? If you don't have any skill sets that translate to anything else, then how valuable were you to the American taxpayer, and what job was it that you were doing that literally apparently applies to nothing else in the country, in the private sector? That would be highly unusual, I would add as well. So this whole notion from Tim Kaine, it is frankly an angle that is predictable because they're just trying to latch on to anything at this point. They are grasping at straws. But when you actually think about it, beyond just the talking point from Tim Kaine, it doesn't make any sense. And here's our caller of the day on KCMO.
It's the Mundo in the Morning Caller of the Day on KCMO Talk Radio, now on FM at 95.7.
What about you, Dennis in Bonner Springs? What's up, buddy?
Hey, Pete. It's kind of ironic that you came up with this Senator Kaine thing. Not only should he be worried about the veterans, he needs to worry about the active service people. I don't know if you saw over the weekend about the lost money for feeding our active servicemen that was on Fox.
I did not see that story on Fox.
My son, who was in the Army out of Fort Carson, lived through that, where they didn't have food to eat. They had lima beans and toast on Fort Carson. I believe there's 5 mess halls on Fort Carson. 2 of them would be open. By the time you get across the fort to eat and get in line, you couldn't get your food because you had to be back. But here's the thing. They have I forget what they call it. It's like a stipend, where if you don't live on base or, out of dorm, that you get X amount of dollars for food. My son qualified for it for like 15 months. He got it 1 month, the last month he was in the service. We're not taking care of our active service. We're not taking care of our veterans. They need to get off their backsides, because if they can take care of these other people like they do, we can take care of those people.
Well, this is a great point. And yes, the story goes back to Thanksgiving. So I found the story and I remember it. I didn't realize Fox brought it back over the weekend. But basically in Fort Carson, Colorado, they didn't have really enough food to feed the active service members over the holidays, which is just an embarrassment.
They didn't have fruit for months.
Yeah.
Anyway, hey, thanks for letting me vent, man, because it lit my you-know-what up the other Saturday night so much that I couldn't go to sleep. I was so angry because I lived with my son. I would go out there every 2 months, take him to Sam's Club and buy him $400 worth of food so he could eat.
Dennis in Bonner Springs, our caller of the day. It's an outstanding call. This guy's driving out to Colorado. His kid's serving the country. He's got no food outside of lima beans. And he's going to Sam's Club with him to feed them. But yeah, now Tim Kaine cares very much about veterans, making sure they keep their cushy government jobs. Trust me, many of them are going to be better off in the private sector anyway. 913-408-7957. Let's go to Chris in Kansas City. What's up, Chris?
Hey, good morning, Pete. I'm not going to take cheap shots at Tim Kaine and say that he beclowns Rockhurst High School or beclowns Mizzou. But I will say the man is completely disingenuous, because when he says that he doesn't like unelected officials, quote unquote, the whole point of the Trump movement is that the swamp and the bureaucracy are 25, I don't know how many, 30,000, 50,000 unelected officials that are paid for by taxpayers in Washington, D.C., that run this country, who are unelected. And that's the whole point of the swamp, the deep state, the bureaucracy, whatever you want to call it. When he trots himself out there and says, oh, I don't like an unelected official, that's just a crock. He loves unelected officials controlling his ideology in the public square.
Well said, Chris. And I think Elon Musk is probably the first unelected official that they don't like in Washington, D.C., to your point. So well done, man. That's a good call. And here's the thing. This whole idea of paring back the government, I want to play for you Obama and Biden and some of their clips from when they were president and vice president. And you can tell this is Biden as VP and not as president, because he's actually coherent.
Come on, man.
This is these two guys, and I put this clip up on X over the weekend at Pete Mundo. Here it is.
Budget reform is not an option. It's a necessity.
The American people are entitled to transparency.
We can't sustain a system that bleeds billions of taxpayer dollars on programs that have outlived their usefulness or exist solely because of the power of politicians, lobbyists, or interest groups.
They're entitled to be able to figure out where their dollars are going, and they're entitled to accountability to make sure that we're using the dollars for what we said it was for.
Whoa! They are entitled to transparency and accountability. If you were to read those words on a piece of paper today and you attributed them to Donald Trump or Elon Musk, you'd have people screaming about how that's anti-democracy. Trump's a right-wing crazy. Those words came out of the mouths of Barack Obama and Joe Biden while they were president and vice president, because that's how normal people should be thinking. Now, Obama and Biden failed on this tremendously, but at least they said what they thought was appealing to the American public. The difference now is someone's actually doing something about it. And it's not like trimming here and trimming there. It's literally just blowing the whole thing up, and that's what it needs when you're $36 trillion in debt with $2 trillion annual deficits. And yes, there will be some pain. There'll be some clunkiness around it. I readily admit that. But it's what has to be done. Coming up next, we'll wrap up the show with, if you didn't see it, last night, the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live. There was no football on Sunday for the first time since like August. And I'm like, I'll watch a little bit of this. And I literally stumbled upon it. One of the first things I see is Tom Hanks mocking Trump voters. The whole thing wasn't awful. It wasn't good. This was definitely the low light. We'll wrap up the show with it next on KCMO.
Dave Ramsey here, and you're listening to Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, now airing on FM at 95.7.
Like, I'm all about making fun of people. I don't care who you are. Heck, Donald Trump is a treasure trove of having some fun with, right? It's easy to goof on Trump. It's very easy. It certainly was easy to goof on Joe Biden. I mean, yeah, that was just a no-brainer. And it's all in good fun. I'm all about it, right? But last night, I just happened to pop on SNL's 50th anniversary show. And what are the odds? I turn it on. It wasn't at the start of the show. It was a little bit into the show. And you got Tom Hanks as part of the Black Jeopardy skit, standing there in a MAGA hat and being afraid to shake Kenan Thompson's hand as the host of this Black Jeopardy show. And here's what this skit sounded like.
Oh, well, thank you. Hey, now speaking of church, can I say something? If more folks went to church, we wouldn't be in this mess we're in now.
You know what? I agree with you, Doug. I'd like to shake your hand, sir. Here we go.
No,
oh, no. Oh, no. It's just a handshake. Yeah, it's just a handshake. Yeah, all right. You're welcome at Black Jeopardy anytime.
All right. Well, thank you, my brother. Maybe I'll start a show for you to come on, and we'll call it White Jeopardy.
No. We don't need it. We don't need it.
So there's Tom Hanks playing a Rube in a MAGA hat. And you obviously can't see it, but he kind of steps back when Kenan Thompson comes over to shake his hand as a black man. Now, there's just really nothing funny about it. And it's also just historically ignorant and accurate when you talk about, or inaccurate, when you talk about the coalition that Donald Trump just put together for the Republican Party, where you had a realignment of the parties amongst working class voters who are white, black, Asian, Latino. You saw the Jewish community move to the right. Literally, most demographics shifted, in some ways, double digits to the right from 4 years ago. Minority communities as well, shifting double digits to the right. That gave Donald Trump a popular vote victory, first time that's happened for a Republican in 20 years. That gave him an Electoral College landslide victory. And he did it not with just white people, like Tom Hanks and SNL wanted to portray, but frankly, with a pretty diverse coalition, especially when you talk about a Republican Party. Really, for the Republican Party, it was the most diverse coalition they've had since the Civil Rights Act.
Yeah, and in fact, the opposite is true. We have, there's a video from a couple of years ago. There was a Trump rally down at Liberty Memorial. And so a black reporter, he was just kind of a media influencer, I guess, not reporter, took his camera down there to see what would happen to him. And everybody's like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah, come on
Have
down.
a drink here, you know. He's like, wow, this is surprising. It surprised him over his 10-minute video. So, in fact, the opposite is true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true, man. And I remember that very well. You're right. Trump won the largest share of non-white votes of any Republican since at least Gerald Ford in 1976, and could be going back to our own Dwight Eisenhower in 1960. The whole angle of like, Trump voters don't like black people. I know you guys tried that in 2017 for 4 years, and maybe it worked to some degree, but it's not working today. And it's not funny. Like, you can make fun of, there's plenty of things you can make fun of Trump or even Trump voters for, right? I mean, if you want to act like, if you want to do a skit on Trump voters, like buying up the Trump meme coins as like their retirement fund, like that would be kind of funny. That would be kind of fun. I could get behind that and I could chuckle at something like that. But the whole thing of like a man in a MAGA hat will not shake a black man's hand, trust me. There were many MAGA voters, whites, blacks, Asians, Latinos. They probably shook each other's hands the day after Donald Trump won. Now, while Tom Hanks had his face in his hand in Hollywood crying with all his other largely white, progressive Hollywood elites, there were working class men and women, and yes, there were only two genders in normal America, who were shaking each other's hands of all backgrounds. glad that Donald Trump sunk Kamala Harris and beat her back on November 5th. And they can't stand that. So they make up a narrative that doesn't actually exist, and they call it comedy. Now, there was some decent stuff. I was not the target demo for this thing last night. Like, my earliest memory of SNL is Jimmy Fallon doing the weekend updates, and that's like 20 years ago at this point. So I'm not really the target demo for the SNL 50th year anniversary show. It's very much a show geared towards, at this point, white progressive boomers.
Came on when I was in high school. It was kind of funny.
Exactly. I mean, it's
had some good musical guests over the years.
And John's got a big birthday coming up this week. So, it's for that crowd. It's not for me. I get that. I'm fine with it. But it wasn't the funniest thing I've ever seen. It was very much mediocre at best. But hey, if it was your cup of tea, Adam Sandler, his song was okay. But that was the only thing that I kind of mildly laughed at the whole night. With that, I hope you had a few more chuckles this morning than SNL gave you last night. We're back tomorrow morning at 6. Kevin Keatsman Uncanceled is next.